Welcome back to the lecture series on basics of Python programming. This is Anbalaganyam. Through this video lecture, I'm going to talk about the topic called the types of functions. This is in fact the continuation of the video that has been previously uploaded by me. So the previous video was about introduction to functions. If anyone missed that video, the link for the video will be provided in the description of this video. You can watch it, then you can continue with this current video. So types of functions, basically in Python we have two types of functions, namely predefined function or built-in functions, in other words we can say. The second type of functions are called user-defined functions. Predefined functions are the ones for which the definitions need not be given by the users, need not be given by the programmers, because the predefined functions have already been defined by or written by the authors of Python, and they have been kept in the libraries. They are kept in the Python system library. So the only thing that is required is we will have to call them by passing on the necessary number of arguments required for them. Some examples for the predefined functions or built-in functions that we have already used in the previous video lecture. There is a function input function called the input. So through that function input, we will be able to read the inputs that will be given from the input device, the standard input device called the keyboard, and also the function that we used, one of the functions that we used in the previous lecture, that is int_of. The function int_of is for doing the type conversion from the string data type to the integer data type. So that is what is the predefined function or the built-in functions. The second type of functions are going to be the user-defined functions. So they are the ones, they are the ones for which the definitions will be given by the programmers. So depending upon the need, depending upon the application for which we are writing the program, the function will be created by us, and that is why they are called user-defined functions. Functions defined by the users. Fine. Now, we need to know a little more about something called the taxonomy of user-defined functions. User-defined functions itself can be roughly grouped into four categories, namely a parameterized function with return keyword. That means a function that will accept inputs, one input or more than one input, as well as returns its output through the keyword called return keyword. That is going to be the category 1. The second category of the functions in user-defined functions is going to be parameterized functions without return keyword. That means a function that will accept inputs through the parameter list, but the function will not return its result. It will not return its output through this keyword return. The third category is going to be called the parameterless functions without return keyword. That means the function that we are going to write will not accept any inputs through parameter list. The function will neither accept inputs nor return the output through the return keyword. The last and final category of the user-defined functions is going to be called as parameterless functions with a return keyword. Functions which are falling under this category may not accept inputs through the parameter list, but they will return the result. They will return the calculated output through the return keyword. So these four are going to be the categories, the different groups of user-defined functions. Let me now switch over to the Python idle shell for showing you the demonstration of user-defined functions and its different categories, as well as the predefined functions. Here are some examples for the predefined functions available in Python. Let me use my magnifier to zoom in the size of the Python shell window. There is a familiar predefined module in Python's library called math. The module math simply, it consists of the predefined functions, the definitions for the predefined functions, namely square root or some trigonometric functions that we use in our day-to-day life mathematical operations, namely sine, cos, tan, or while calculating the logarithmic value of a particular number. In all those occasions, we can import the module called math into our working environment before we want to use any of those functions. Let me now import a module called math, and this module is having the definition for the function, the predefined function square root. Supposing the number that I'm going to use here is 25. For this number 25 I want to calculate the square root, then I can print like this, print of I will say that the square root of I'll say the square root of a placeholder is going to be the placeholder dot format of for the first placeholder I need to substitute the value that is stored in the variable x, and for the second placeholder I need to call the predefined function called sqrt, which is nothing but the short form of square root, and I'm going to calculate the square root of x. So balancing of parentheses should be taken care by us. Since there are 3 opening parentheses, there should be 3 closing parentheses at the end. Now we can see here the function, the predefined function math, the predefined function called square root, whose definition is kept inside this module math, is simply invoked here. So it is now able to return us the square root of the number 25 that is stored in the variable called x. That way we can do. And also there is a function called int. The function called int is there. So with that we can convert a number of floating point type into integer data type or a string to integer type. So that conversion that we can do with the help of the predefined function called int. And over here the result of the square root function is going to be of type floating point. We can turn it to be of type integer with the help of the function integer. So that I'm going to do here. So int is the function int of math.sqrt of the variable, the number for which I'm going to calculate the square root is x. Now it is returning me the integer type of the result, the integer number 5. But earlier it was returning a floating point number 5.0. So these are some few examples for the predefined functions. Let's now switch over to the next topic called the user-defined functions and its types. Now for working with predefined functions, it is good to use the script mode. So I'm going to open a new file here. Let me first save it. So while saving this, I need to give a name. So for the 2 programs that I demonstrated in the previous lecture, I used names like functions 1, 2. So for this program or for this file, I'm giving the name functions 3. Let me now define my function here. Let it be a function for calculating the area as well as circumference of a circle. So let me name this function area underscore circumference. Area underscore circumference is going to be the name of this user-defined function. You can now probably can remember the key components of a function that we have seen in the end of the previous lecture. We are going to be the keyword def, a function name, then the parameter list of this function area circumference is going to have one single parameter called radius. So let me give the short form of radius called rad, and it is important to put a colon here, otherwise we cannot get the indentation. Now this is where we are going to have the statements that will carry out the calculation part of this function. So for calculating the area, I'm going to have a variable, for the expression that will calculate the area, the result of that expression should be stored in a variable, and for that I'm declaring a variable, I'm introducing a variable called the a. So as we all know, the formula that is required to calculate the area of a circle is pi r square. So the value of pi that we can directly write here, 3.14 into the radius is already with us. So radius, here I'm making use of the exponent operator that is available in Python that we calculate, that will raise, the value of radius to the power 2. So we'll be getting pi r square as the area. Then comes circumference. I'm going to store the result of the expression that will calculate the circumference in a variable called c. Now 2 pi r is going to be the formula that we will have to use to calculate the circumference of circle. So 2 into 3.14 into radius. That's all. Now the calculation part is successfully done. The input is accepted by this function through this key, through this variable, the parameter called radius. The calculations are done. The only thing that is remaining here is we need to return the result of this function. So that I am accomplishing through the keyword called return. One special thing about Python's functions is Python's function can return more than one results. More than one value can be returned by a function. It is possible in Python. So here the function area circumference is going to return both the area as well as the circumference c. Now this is what is the function definition for the function area underscore circumference. Let's now quickly go back to the slide, the PowerPoint slide to see the different the categories of the functions, the different categories of user-defined functions, parameterized function with return keyword, parameterized function without return keyword, parameterless function with return keyword, and parameterless function without return keyword. Now, so the function area underscore circumference, it simply falls under the category parameterized function with a return keyword, because the function is accepting one single parameter and it is returning two outputs through the keyword return. So both are kept. The parameter list is here, and that's why we are calling this function a parameterized function, and it is also returning its outputs through the keyword return. So this falls under category 1. Now, in order to get the radius for, the value for the radius, we need to introduce a variable called r. R is equal to int of input of, I need to ask, enter the radius. Yes. And after successfully obtaining the radius, now we are ready to call the function area underscore circumference. And since this function is going to return two different results, those two results should be stored in two different variables that we may introduce here, area comma circumference. I am writing the short form of circumference, area comma circumference is equal to, I need to call this function. While calling the function, I need to specify the name of this, the complete name of this function. So circumference, area underscore circumference, and the input argument, the argument that is required to be passed to this function is going to be r. Now, the moment this instruction that takes care of calling the function area underscore circumference is executed, our program's control flow will be immediately transferred to the definition part of this function, and the value of this argument r will be substituted to the variable, the parameter list, the variable that is kept in the parameter list called radius, rad, and from there we will be doing the calculation parts and the results will be written. The moment the program's control flow reaches this return keyword, the calculated results such as area and circumference will be returned to the function calling statement. Over here on the left hand side of this expression or this instruction, we have area and circumference, two different variables. So the value of a that is returned by the function area circumference will be stored in area, and the value of c that is returned by the same function will be stored in the variable called the circumference. So that way now we are ready to print the result of this calculation. The area is placeholder 1 and the circumference is the circumference is the placeholder 2 dot format of. Now we are ready to print. We need to specify the list of variables. From there we will be taking the values for these placeholders. So they are going to be area. Since the first placeholder is responsible for printing the area, I am giving the correct order of this parameter list for the method format. So area comma circumference. Now the format method is successfully invoked and the print statement is also executed here. It is kept here. Now this way we can create a user defined function. The function is defined by us. The function is not only defined by us, but also the function is called by us. Unless the function is called, the instructions kept in the function will not be executed. The function's definition will not be touched by the interpreter. Let me now execute this code in order to view the output. By pressing the key F5, I am giving the radius 5. Now for the radius 5, the function, the program that we wrote is able to calculate the area and also the circumference. So all these things are printed here. Now by doing some changes in this program, we can create the user defined functions of the other 3 types, namely parameterized function without return keyword. Now maybe I can give a comment line here. This is an example for parameterized function with return keyword. Let me use the actual spelling of the keyword return with return keyword. This is going to be the category 1, and for the category 2, that's about function, parameterized function without return keyword. In that case, we will have to make a small change here. So here in this function, we will have to remove this return keyword. The result produced by this function, area underscore circumference, should be printed within this, or it should be printed inside of this function area underscore circumference. Let me now copy this print statement. The same will be placed inside this function. So the area is going to be placeholder 1 and the circumference is going to be the placeholder 2. And here for area I need to give A, and for the circumference I need to give C. Okay. So since the printing of results is done inside this function area circumference, area underscore circumference, we need not, while calling the function, we need not take care of storing the results returned by the function in variables like area and circumference. So I'm going to remove it here. I'm simply calling the function area underscore circumference by passing on the argument that is R. Now this is going to be a typical example for the second category of user defined functions, that is parameterized function without return keyword. Now you will not find the return keyword. You are not finding the keyword return inside this function because the function is not going to return anything. The result calculated by this function, the output calculated by this function, is printed here within this function, inside this function. We are not going to print it outside. So that way we can have, let me now execute this code. I'm going to save it by pressing the key combination Ctrl S, and the function key F5 is for executing this code. Yeah, this time I'm giving the radius 3. So it is able to print the result. The area is this and the circumference is this. Yeah. Now after getting exposed to the second category of the user defined functions, now we are ready to look into the third category of functions called the parameterless functions. Parameterless function without return keyword. So since this is going to be a parameterless function, the argument, the parameter list should be removed from this function, and the input for this radius should be obtained inside this function area underscore circumference. So I'm using it as, so here the variable name R was there earlier. Now I need to change it to radius. So radius is equal to int of input of enter the radius. Now after successfully obtaining the radius that will be used for the calculation part, that is calculating the area and circumference, and the same, the result of this calculation is also printed within this function area underscore circumference that we can see here. This is going to be the third category. The function name is area underscore circumference. It is not having any parameter list. It is not using any written keyword here. So that way it is going to be the third category. Let me now give a try. Yeah, and one more thing, a small thing that we need to correct here is, since this function is not having any parameter list, while calling this function, we need to give an empty argument list. So earlier we passed the argument r, but now from now on, passing of argument is no longer expected by this function area underscore circumference. So I am simply removing this. I am passing an empty argument list. Now I am saving this and let me give a try on executing this code. This time I am giving 4, so it is able to show me the area and circumference calculated for the given radius 4. So that way this is going to be the third category of functions, user-defined functions. The fourth category of user-defined functions is going to be parameterless function with written keyword. So written keyword is necessary here. So once again, the printing of the outputs should be removed from this function area circumference, and the same must be kept outside the function after we call the function. So after the function calling is done, so I am going to keep the written keyword here. So written, I am going to return both area and circumference here over here, and while calling the function also it is necessary to introduce two variables, namely area as well as circumference, which are area and circumference, which are equal to the function calling statement for the function area circumference. So the moment this statement is executed, the program's control flow will get transferred to this function's definition part, and the calculation will be done. Returning of the results will be done here. So the value that is stored in A will be assigned to the variable area, and the value that is stored in the variable C will be assigned to the variable circumference. And we are printing them here. So in format method, we need to change the variable names to be area and circumference. Now this is going to be the fourth category of user-defined functions. Parameter list. The parameter list is found to be empty, but a return keyword is used. The return keyword is used here to return the results. And you can see here, while calling the function, we are passing on empty argument list because there is no parameter list here. So that way the function calling statement is kept here. But since there are two return values from this function, we need to introduce two variables for holding the values of those returned results, and later we can print them in whichever way we want. So this is going to be the fourth way, the fourth type of user-defined functions. Let me now save this code and give a try on executing it by pressing the key F5. This time I'm giving 8, so it is able to calculate the area as well as circumference of this particular radius value. So that way it's time to recall, it's time to quickly summarize the points about the types of functions. Functions are of two types, namely user-defined functions and the predefined functions. Predefined functions will not seek any definition from user's end because the definitions were already written and they are kept in system library. When it comes to user-defined function, right from definition to calling, everything should be taken care by the users, by the programmers. And there are four categories of user-defined functions, namely parameterized function with return keyword, parameterless function with return keyword, parameterized function without return keyword, parameterless function without return keyword. So with that, let me now finish this lecture. In forthcoming video lectures, in all our forthcoming video lectures, we are going to have a quick demonstration as well as a discussion. We are going to have a quick discussion on the other topics related to functions, namely passing different kinds of arguments, arbitrary arguments or keyword arguments or default arguments with functions, and we will also discuss about the topic called local, global, and the non-local variables in Python. So thanks for watching this video lecture. Do subscribe to my channel, Computer Engineering Made Easier, and you can also press the bell button for getting the notification of the lectures that I'm going to upload from week to week or from day to day. Once again, thanks for watching this video. Thank you.